So, what a lot of people don't realize is that anxiety, usually anxiety attacks happens or occurs a lot while people are driving. Anybody who suffers from anxiety attacks, they will tell you that, man, most of the times I get them, man, I'll be driving. And let me tell you, it's a scary situation. Wow. When you get an anxiety attack when you're driving.
Got to pull over on the side.
You got to pull over on the side. If you got any bottles of water near you, you downing them like you in the fourth quarter playing against Jordan. Let me tell you, there's been plenty of days that I'm crossing a bridge. And it's ironic because if I get an anxiety attack while I'm driving, it's almost always when I'm crossing a bridge. I wonder if there's any philosophical undertone to that. Something happening, on a philosophical level that is making that happen every time I cross a bridge, and what that may mean. But anyway, it's usually when I cross a bridge. So what I usually do is at that point, you feel like you can't even drive. You feel like, yo, nobody better get too close to me. I start winding the windows. If I have to, I look at people like, yo, back up, because I don't know where this car about to go. And I stay with, water bottles near me, so I start down on water bottles. And my attacks never last longer than a minute. Thank God. Thank God, because some people have attacks as long as 10 minutes.
What about breathing into the brown paper bag?
Now, they say you could do that too, but I haven't tried that yet.
Oh, okay.
I haven't tried that yet.
Okay.
Again, I thank God because it's a scary experience. And I thank God because mine usually only lasts for 60 seconds.
So, being that you said from the age of 16, you could recall.
My first one was 16 for sure.
16. Mm-hmm. Did you, and then when you finally went and got checked out and you got diagnosed.
Right.
Was when you were in EMT.
My EMT.
And between all that period of time, while you were having the anxiety attacks.
Oh my God.
How did you go to the doctor? Did you try to find out what was wrong with you, or did you just do the black people solution, drink some bush?
Well, you know what they say. Black people don't go to the doctor for nothing.
For nothing.
For nothing.
Right.
And me coming up in a Caribbean home, Dettol was the answer to everything.
To every sickness.
You could come home and, Mommy, I got shot. Rub some Dettol on it and you're going to be all right. Mommy, I got stabbed. We got some Dettol underneath the kitchen sink. Rub it and you fine. I'm using humor to express something very real. We have a tendency to really not want to go inside of Western medical facilities. And a lot of it is for good reasons. We go in these facilities and not only are our problems not addressed, but they're experimenting on us 9 or 10 times. So there's a fear even associated with going there. So anxiety itself is heavily steeped in fear. So a person that is heavily steeped in fear wouldn't want to go to a place that is already a place of fear to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I didn't want to go to hospitals. But after, I don't believe I touched on this yet, but when I had the attack as an EMT, it was at that point that I knew something was wrong, because I had a patient on my bus, man.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I knew I wasn't exaggerating. This thing was real.
Right.
So the ER doctors that attended to me, they recommended that I go and see an MRI specialist, which I did. And I had a standing MRI. And they checked my head, they checked my spine, and everything was fine. Nothing was wrong with me per se that they could see or examine through the lens, of the MRI. And that scared me even more. But it also brought some comfort, because at that point I thought I had cancer.
We always think the worst.
You always think the worst. During my 20s and, to admit even my early 30s, I had a light cigarette habit. I wasn't a person that would smoke cigarettes every day, or people that would do packs a day, but I would probably smoke cigarettes 2 to 3 times a week. Or I would smoke a cigarette to bring down the social high if I was drinking at a party, drinking alcohol.
Do you think that was also a result of the anxiety?
Oh, absolutely. That was my escape.
Right.
That was my escape. I never smoked cigarettes before my first anxiety attack. I found it was an escape. It helped to calm me down. And then I picked up alcohol. It helped to calm me down, And then, the green flower helped to calm me down too. Then at age 21, I realized that, marijuana made me paranoid. And it wasn't for me.
Worse than the anxiety.
It was even worse than it. I remember, like it was yesterday, I had an anxiety attack when I was high on marijuana. And I promised myself that if my brain would work the next day, because I felt like I was dying, but I promised myself if my brain would function the next day, I would never touch marijuana again. And since age 21, I never did. It ain't for everybody.
It ain't for everybody.
And the reality is that what they're putting into it today makes it definitely not for everybody. Because you're not even getting it in its organic or natural state.
Right.
Yeah. So getting back to the topic at hand, in addressing anxiety, scientifically now, there are 3 ways that treatment is approached. And here's the irony in these 3 ways. When you look at the 3 modalities that Western medicine tells you is your best or direct approach to ending or starting the healing process, I found a perfect correlation in the Torah or in the Bible. So let me first tell you what Western medicine says. The 3 ways to approach dealing with anxiety is suppression, isolation, and articulation.
Okay. Suppression?
Suppression meaning don't let it get to you. We have to act like it doesn't even exist. We put it down. Because when something is at eye level, it's within your eyesight, you can see it.
Right.
But what's the saying? Out of sight, out of mind. So the idea of suppressing something is to take it out of your eye view, because at that point it's almost as if it doesn't exist, right?
Right.
The second way is isolation. Divorce yourself from environments, from people, and from situations that trigger it. The third way is articulation. You got to speak to somebody. You can't be afraid to express what you're going through, your ailments, because what a lot of people don't realize is that sound or speech is actually a sound wave. There's a sound wave that accompanies speaking, or i.e., to really get to the heart of it, a vibration. When you get back into the mind of the Pythagoreans, who definitely borrowed from the ancient Egyptians, ancient Sumerians, and the ancient Hebrews, the Pythagoreans said that there's nothing in existence that doesn't vibrate. If it doesn't vibrate, it doesn't exist. Yes. All things that exist vibrate. Vibration is the basis of all things that exist. Having said that, when you're speaking, I don't care what tonnage you're speaking, I don't care what accents you're using, there is a specific vibration there. Singing is known in medical settings to promote healing. Also, calm conversation or deep conversation is known to promote healing. Sometimes simple articulation of one's ailment puts you on track to healing, begins the healing process. Now, what is extremely significant about all this is that after approaching all of this information, because after I was finally diagnosed, they began to hand me pamphlet after pamphlet after pamphlet. So I'm skimming, but me, I just want to get to the part where it says, how do I get over it? Y'all already said you don't know the cause. You already said that, treatment is scarce. Exactly what do I need to do for this to stop, right? So I approach the pamphlet that tells me that there are 3 modalities, which is suppression, isolation, and articulation. So then, because I'm a very spiritual person, I said, I wonder if any characters in the Bible ever faced anxiety.
Very interesting.
Right? I wonder if anybody in the Torah ever experienced anxiety, and if it's on record how to deal with it. Now, at that point in my life, I was already 33 years old. And, I had already, read the Bible several times. So in my mind, I was like, I don't know who it could be. because I read that Bible, quite a few times by this point. Since age 14 till at that time 33, I was like, I don't know who that's going to be, because I pretty much have read about every character. Then I came across the book of Proverbs, the great mind of King Solomon. And in the 12th chapter and the 25th verse, King Solomon says verbatim, Ge'ada belev ish yashkana. Anxiety in the heart of man weighs him down. Let me say it again. The great brilliant mind, King Solomon says in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 25, Ge'ada belev ish yashkana. Anxiety in the heart of man weighs him down. I said, what a brilliant book. Here we have on record a 3,000 to 4,000 year old work that is on record telling us what are the actual physical presentations or markers that identify anxiety. That one of the chief markers or chief symptoms is you fainting, falling down, something that will bring you literally to your knees. Literally.
Yeah.
Now, this word in Hebrew, yeshkana, the last word which says to weigh him down or to bring him down, the word is down. The root is shaka, which we use in another word, tishtakuwe, which means to worship or also to bow down. Right? So here's the beautiful thing about it. The three modalities of how we approach healing is also correlated to the three contextual ways this word yeshkana in Hebrew is used throughout Scripture. In some places, shaka means to suppress or to bring down. In other places, shaka is used to mean isolation. Because, again, the idea is out of mind, out of sight, out of mind, right? So if we take something and we lower it from our eye view, it's almost as if it disappeared, right?
That's right.
So there's times in the Torah or in the Bible itself where that root shaka literally entails isolation. And then the last way, the last modality, which is articulation, is this. The root shaka is to bow down in worship. Or obeisance. At this point, when a person is bowed down in obeisance, what are they doing? They're praying. They're speaking. They are articulating. It was very ironic to me that what medical science now knows with advanced technology, the Bible, the Torah, is on record teaching us already. Based on the three ways that this Hebrew word yeshkana is used throughout Scripture, it perfectly correlates with how Western science says we approach healing anxiety. Extremely important.
And repeat those three ways again.
Suppression, isolation, and articulation. So we suppress it because the idea is if it is out of sight, it is out of mind. Isolation works because if we remove ourselves from those physical triggers, be it environments, individuals, or just simple modalities of thought, because there's also a mental isolation. In fact, again, to draw from the Torah, one of the reasons why I rate the personality of Yitzchak or Isaac, Abraham's son, as being such a special person is because the Torah says that he went out to meditate in the field during the day. This was right before he married his wife Rebecca, right? And the word that it used for meditation is a word that entails mental isolation. There are words used throughout the Bible for meditation. No two words are the same. Some of the words come from roots that are literally telling you that there's methods that were used by these prophets or these inspired individuals that brought them to a state of meditation. So some of the words that are used for meditation are words that are rooted in speech, because sometimes repeating a phrase or a word induced a state of prophecy. It's referred to as mantra meditation, where someone focuses on one word or one series or combinations of words and repeats them until they come into that state, until they gain that inspiration. Because the main idea of meditation is spiritual liberation, and that can only be achieved through deep focus. So some of the methodology employed by the biblical prophets of old, they would take one particular object or subject, focus that alone, and use the intense focus on that to isolate all other thoughts out of their minds, that they're focused on that one thing, which is usually the Creator. And in the case of our prophets, they would focus on the divine names of the Creator. So a prophet would meditate on a series of divine names or one particular divine name until that particular meditation pushed every single thought out of his mind, literally and figuratively, to where he focused on the one thing and the one thing only, the source of all life, and it brought him to a state of high meditation. So when we talk about isolation, we have to remember that isolation is not just physical, it's also mental. So mental isolation would literally be, you got to stop thinking about some of the triggers. Some of the triggers that cause people to have anxiety attacks are triggers that induce stress. Thinking of stressful situations. Thinking of how am I going to make the rent next week. Thinking of, what am I going to do to improve my relationship that I believe is failing. Thinking about what am I going to do to improve my friendships and other interrelationships that I have with individuals in my circle that I believe are failing. We have to stop, cease, and get a hold, get a grip. In that moment, you regain the control that you're looking to have a grasp on. One of the main features of an anxiety attack is the feeling of not being in control. Individuals who experience anxiety attacks can readily tell you, and I've spoken to quite a dozen, they can readily tell you that when they're in an environment that they don't feel like they're in total control of, and what I mean total control is that they don't know what can happen in this environment. There's nothing that they can say or do to cause a chain of reaction so that things can flow smoothly or positively. There's two things that they're going to do. They're going to fight or they're going to flight. And that's natural. That comes from inside. That's the body's defense mechanism. Now again, going back to the book, Shook Ones, Anxiety Playing Tricks on Me, shout out to Charlamagne the God. In the book, he talks about the word fear and learning to embrace it, understanding that it's healthy to feel fear. But he also has two different mnemonics for the word fear. He says that to him, the word fear is face everything and rise, or fear everything and run, which is essentially what the medical community calls fight or flight.
And that's interesting. Coming back to something, I don't know how you're going to take this, but something that I could see in your character that I've noticed, and I know many in the conscious community who are listening to this and listening to your words. Sometimes, like there are instances when I see you in a debate or in a discussion, and it's going well for you, and then, boom, all of a sudden, the Hulk comes out and you ready to fight, or you ready to, it makes sense now.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Like some of the triggers and some of the things of anxiety, and not making excuses, because we grown men. Right. We don't make excuses. Right. But now I could kind of like understand it better, because sometimes we've had discussions and I'm like, why you bugged out? What happened? And you go, I don't know what happened. I just flipped. You know what I'm saying? I messed up. Or you go through a depression state, because now you're thinking about naturally what everybody's going to feel about you, how everybody's going to feel about you. But this is definitely something that people, I think people would try to use it against you.
Well, of course.
But you to come out and say this now, I think people would try to use it. And I'm just being honest.
Of course.
People are going to try to use it against you if you ever get into any other type of debates. And I think some people understood that, and they try to poke the bear. You know what I'm saying? Because we're intelligent as a people.
That's right.
So in any which way, we're going to try to have an advantage in a competitive setting. Right. So if you get the brighter individuals,
of course,
they're going to they're going to poke at you
until
the Hulk comes out.
That's
and
right.
then say, oh, there you go. I won.
They got my number.
I got you, right. So it's good that we could discuss this and that this could be brought to the forefront because, like you said, you might be helping someone that's young, that's coming up. And also you help people, like if you got a spouse that's constantly, like sometimes us as men, we look at our wives and we say, she's nagging me. Mm-hmm. Or she's just acting that way because she just wants my attention, not knowing really that they're going through an anxiety attack.
That's right. That's right.
Or vice versa. A wife looking at the husband and be like, well, what's wrong with him? He's isolating himself, or he's doing this, or he's emotional, he's this.
Always so tensed.
He's so tense. They might be going through an anxiety attack, and this might help even people in the homes kind of figure these things out. So
let me tell you, it took a lot of courage to, number one, go on Facebook and be able to say that. Facebook is full of people who share all of their moments of triumph. Nobody's sharing losses on Facebook.
No.
You don't open Facebook to people talking about the L they just took.
Yeah, I took an L.
How many times you open up Facebook to a person saying, yo, I didn't get that job I told y'all I was going to get? Very rare. Yeah, Facebook is a place that caters to the ego. Everybody on Facebook is winning.
Right.
Until you see them in the street and you be like, you don't look nothing like your profile pic.
Right.
You ain't driving none of them cars we see you with. A lot of fronting that be going on. So here's the thing about it. The reality of this situation is that it took a lot of courage, number one, to make the first step of going on a social media website such as Facebook, the biggest one of all,
right,
and being able to say something that is so touchy, so close to home, so embarrassing. Took a lot of courage.
Right.
And it's now taken a lot of courage to come before this camera, which has in potential 1 million+ viewers over the duration of time. There'll be 1 million different people. They're going to look, they're going to point, they're going to judge my story. But I can tell you that articulation is real in the sense of what medicine and the scientific community is telling us, that to be able to speak on these things brings healing. Every time I'm able to speak about it, there's a sense of comfort, because it usually draws out people who are going through the same thing.
Right.
And then I get to hear different points of view, different scenarios, different approaches on how to deal with it, and that brings comfort. One of the scariest places to be is in a state of mind where you believe no one is going through what you're going through, no one can relate, and you're going to die.
The pressure sets in.
There's a lot of pressure. And that pressure creates an environment for extreme depression. So make no mistake about it. I am taking off the cape today. And I'm showing you that you might be used to Superman, but Clark Kent is very real. And what I meant by, there are people that look up to my bravery. There are people who look up to my courage, but there's people that never see me in my weakest moments. The main idea, or the main premise or point behind that, is that I can only be valuable if I'm transparent. Because if I only show you one side of the picture, it can kill you. Because I'm not showing you everything. Mm. I'm not telling you about my weak points. I'm not describing and defining and delineating my weaknesses. I'm only speaking of my high points. Everything is fine and dandy on this side. I'm perfect. That is not the truth. And that is not the character of man. We are not perfect. We can become perfect, but we are not perfect.
Right.
And when I say not perfect is, I'm using it by most men's definitions, which is, I never mess up. I never make mistakes. You crazy and you lying.
Right.
We all mess up. We all make mistakes, and we all have flaws. And guess what? We all got some fears and weaknesses too.
That's right. That's right.
You know?
So, you touched on the Tanakh.
Yeah.
Do you see any characters in there? Because now that we're talking about this, do you see any characters in there that you could define as suffering with anxiety, maybe depression, maybe psychopathic? I mean, anxiety is not as bad on to that, but I mean, me thinking off bat, King Saul, maybe suffered with some anxiety.
Well, he definitely suffered from anxiety that was triggered by the triumphs of King David. The pressure that he felt to be the big, strong king, and the difference between the kingship of Saul and the kingship of every other remaining kings to come to the throne is that King Saul was the first king in Israel.
Right.
There was no template that he could draw from.
Right.
People don't give the man enough credit.
Right.
And when we really look at the kingship of Saul, yes, he defied the word of God in visiting the witch of Endor, or as we would say, or even in the language of the Tanakh or the Bible, he went to go see an Obeah woman.
Obeah woman.
Because in the language of the Bible, the word used in Hebrew is Obeah. That's what the witch of Endor was practicing, right? And in the Caribbean, we know the saying, he went to go see an Obeah woman. He defied the word of God by going and visit an Obeah woman. But in essence, King Saul was not a wicked king. Nor was he a wicked man. King Saul, number one, was not an idolater. We had idolatrous kings. King Saul was not a murderer. We had murderous kings. Remember King David, who committed both adultery and murder simultaneously. King Saul did none of the above. And the people thought David was greater. King Saul didn't even think of doing those things. So we don't give Saul enough credit as, number one, being the first king, which means there's an immense pressure on him to do something new. And to function, and almost set the pace, for how things should be. So I agree with you, and I think that King David and his desire to almost compete with David, as the saying goes, Saul slayed his thousands and King David his 10,000s.
That would cause people some anxiety.
That caused some heavy anxiety, especially seeing that the Bible took the time to over-exemplify that it was the women that were saying this. We got to pay attention now. The Bible don't just say that the people said that. It said that the women were saying that. When two men is in a room and a group of people come in that room and start praising one man, so long as it's all men, it ain't personal. Let it be a group of women.
It gets personal.
It gets real personal real quick.
So,
yeah. But I would say, from my eye view, anxiety, I look at the experiences of Joseph. There was an extreme pressure on Joseph. Joseph was one of the most gifted of all the sons of Jacob. He's the son who his father chose to put the coat of many colors on. Of all the sons of Jacob, none of them are on record having dreams. Joseph is replete with dreams. His father had some dreams. He's coming out of the book of dreams. Shout out to Crown Prince Zerubbabel, the book of Genesis. The only book in the Bible, with more than 4 to 5, maybe even 7 occurrences of dreams of high-profile individuals. And, in one scenario, he has a dream where the sun, moon, and 11 stars come and bow down before him, which would be his family, his father, and his brothers. And he soon realized that there was some strong resentment from his brothers because of that dream. That certainly had to bring on some anxiety.